What if I told you there are plants that actually do the weeding for you? Sounds impossible, right? But trust me, nature has its own secret weapons. And once you know what they are, you'll spend a lot less time pulling weeds and a lot more time enjoying your garden. Today, I'm going to share 7 amazing plants that kill weeds naturally. And wait until you see number 6. It's one that most gardeners overlook, and it might just become your new favorite. Let me be honest with you. I used to spend hours bent over in the summer heat, ripping out weeds. My back hurt, my hands were sore, and no matter how much effort I put in, the weeds always came back within days. I know how exhausting and frustrating it feels to fight that endless battle. But then, something changed. I discovered that certain plants don't just look good in the garden, they actually fight weeds for you. They cover the ground, block the sunlight, and stop weeds before they even have a chance to grow. And once I started using them, everything about gardening got easier. I wasn't stuck weeding every weekend, and I could finally focus on growing the plants I really loved. Now, if you love practical gardening tips that save you time and keep your garden healthy, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. I share secrets like this every single week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. And hey, while you're here, drop a quick comment below. What's the most annoying weed in your garden? Is it dandelions? Crabgrass? Bindweed? I'd love to know what you're battling against, because chances are one of these 7 plants can help you fight it. Alright, let's start with the first plant on our list. Clover. Now, clover might not look like much at first glance. In fact, many people think of it as a weed itself. But here's the secret. Clover is actually one of the most powerful allies you can have in your garden when it comes to controlling unwanted weeds. Why does it work? Clover spreads quickly and creates a thick living carpet over the soil. Once it takes hold, there is simply no room for weeds to grow. It blocks the sunlight from reaching weed seeds and smothers them before they even have the chance to sprout. And that's not all. Clover is also a natural soil builder. It's a nitrogen fixer, which means it pulls nitrogen from the air and feeds it right back into your soil. So while it's keeping weeds away, it's also enriching your garden beds for the plants you actually want to grow. How do you use it? Clover is incredibly easy to grow. Just scatter the seeds over bare soil in your garden paths, between rows, or even around taller bedettes. Water it in, and within a few weeks you'll see a lush green mat spreading out. It doesn't need much attention, and once established, it practically takes care of itself. I'll never forget the first time I used clover in one of my beds. I was frustrated with weeds taking over between my rows of tomatoes. But after sowing clover, the weeds simply stopped showing up. In the following season, my tomatoes looked healthier than ever, thanks to the nutrients the clover had given back to the soil. So instead of spending your weekends pulling weeds, imagine planting clover once and letting it do the hard work for you. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever tried planting clover in your garden? Or do you still think of it as a weed? Let me know in the comments below. Next up, plant number 2, and this one is a little bit controversial. Mint and other plants from the mint family. Mint is famous for being aggressive. Once it starts growing, it doesn't really like to stop. And while that might sound like a nightmare for some gardeners, this very trait is exactly what makes mint such a powerful weapon against weeds. Here's why it works. Mint spreads quickly through underground runners and above-ground shoots, forming dense colonies of fragrant greenery. Once mint takes over a patch of soil, weeds don't stand a chance. The roots are too thick, the coverage too heavy, and the competition too fierce. On top of that, mint is useful. You can harvest the leaves for teas, culinary dishes, and even natural insect repellents. So while it's suppressing weeds, it's also giving you fresh aromatic leaves that you can use every single day. But here's the catch. You need to be strategic. Mint can easily escape and overrun areas of your garden if you don't control it. The best way to grow mint is in containers, raised beds, or in spots where you actually want dense coverage. Place it along borders, pathways, or in dedicated patches where you'd rather see mint than weeds. Mint spreads quickly through underground runners and above-ground shoots, forming dense colonies. These growth habits leave little space for weeds to compete. The aggressive nature of mint makes it best suited for controlled areas like pots, raised beds, or defined borders where it can suppress unwanted plants while providing useful leaves for teas and cooking. So if you've got a troublesome area where weeds just won't quit, consider letting mint take over instead. It's a natural, fragrant, and useful way to fight back. And here's a question for you. What's your favorite way to use mint? Do you prefer it in tea, cooking, or just for the smell? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know. Now let's move on to plant number 3, creeping thyme. If clover was the hardworking soil builder, then creeping thyme is the showstopper. This low-growing herb creates a gorgeous, fragrant carpet that not only looks stunning in your garden, but also makes it nearly impossible for weeds to break through. Why does it work so well? Creeping thyme hugs the ground and spreads outward in every direction, filling in the gaps between plants, stones, or stepping paths. By covering the soil so completely, it leaves no room or sunlight for weeds to take hold. And here's the best part. Unlike grass or other ground covers, creeping thyme doesn't just block weeds. It adds beauty and aroma to your space. How to grow it? Creeping thyme thrives in full sun, loves well-drained soil, and once established, it's drought-resistant. Plant it along borders between stepping stones or even in rock gardens. Over time, it forms a dense mat that can withstand foot traffic while still releasing that wonderful thyme scent every time you brush past it. Creeping thyme forms a dense mat over the soil that effectively blocks sunlight from reaching weed seeds. It's drought-resistant once established and requires little maintenance. Because it spreads tightly, weeds find it very difficult to push through, making it one of the most attractive and effective ground covers for weed suppression. So if you want a plant that pulls double duty, weed control, and beauty, creeping thyme is a fantastic choice. Now, let me ask you this. Would you plant creeping thyme for its weed-fighting power or just because it's so beautiful? I'd love to hear your answer in the comments. Plant number 4 is one that might surprise you. Sunflowers. Most people grow sunflowers for their beauty or maybe for their seeds. But what many gardeners don't realize is that sunflowers are also a powerful natural way to control weeds. Here's why. Sunflowers are allelopathic. That's a big word that simply means they release natural chemicals into the soil that can actually suppress the growth of competing plants. In other words, while they're standing tall and soaking up the sun, they're quietly working underground to stop weeds from sprouting. On top of that, their sheer size plays a role too. A mature stand of sunflowers casts heavy shade across the soil surface. That shade alone is enough to keep many weeds from ever getting established. Between the chemical suppression and the shading, sunflowers are like the big guardians of the garden. How to grow them? Sunflowers love full sun and well-drained soil. Plant them in clusters or rows where you want to block weeds and add some vertical interest to your garden. They're fast growers, and once they reach their height, weeds simply don't stand a chance. Sunflowers suppress weeds in 2 ways: by casting dense shade with their tall stalks and broad leaves, and by releasing allelopathic chemicals into the soil that inhibit the germination of certain weeds. When grown in clusters or rows, they significantly reduce weed presence beneath and around them. So if you're looking for a plant that gives you beauty, food, and natural weed suppression all in one, sunflowers are an incredible option. Here's a fun question for you. Would you grow sunflowers mainly for their beauty, for the seeds, or now maybe even for their weed-fighting superpower? Let me know what you think. Now, plant number 5 is one that every gardener should consider. Pumpkins and other squash varieties. These plants are absolute masters at creating living canopies. Once they get going, their enormous broad leaves stretch out and cover the ground like giant green umbrellas. And here's the beauty of it. When those leaves form that thick canopy, weeds underneath simply don't stand a chance. Without sunlight, weed seeds can't sprout, and any that do quickly get smothered. On top of their weed-fighting power, pumpkins and squash give you a double reward. You're not just suppressing weeds, you're also harvesting delicious fruits by the end of the season. It's like getting 2 benefits for the price of one. How do you grow them? Plant them in rich soil with plenty of compost. Give them full sun and some room to spread. Once established, they'll send vines crawling across your garden bed, locking out weeds as they go. Many gardeners even use them as a living mulch around taller plants like corn or trellised beans. It's a natural partnership that works beautifully. Pumpkins and squash control weeds primarily through their sprawling vines and large leaves, which act as a living mulch. The canopy they create prevents sunlight from reaching the ground, which makes it extremely difficult for weeds to germinate and grow. This natural shading effect keeps the soil cooler and weed-free during the growing season. So if you're looking for a plant that turns weed control into a bonus harvest, pumpkins and squash are a gardener's dream. Tell me, would you plant pumpkins mainly for the harvest? Or are you tempted to try them as a weed-blocking ground cover? Drop your answer below. I'm curious. Plant number 6 is one that farmers and gardeners alike have relied on for generations. Ryegrass. Ryegrass is what's called a cover crop, and it's one of the most effective living mulches you can plant. When sown thickly, it forms a dense grassy mat that blankets the soil. This cover does two amazing things. It smothers weeds by leaving them no space to grow, and it also protects your soil from erosion and nutrient loss. Why does it work? Ryegrass grows fast and outcompetes weeds for sunlight, water, and nutrients. By the time weed seeds even think about germinating, ryegrass has already claimed the territory. Plus, when you cut it down and let it decompose, it feeds your soil with organic matter, creating a rich environment for next season's crops. How to use it? Ryegrass is most effective when planted in the off-season, like in fall or early spring. Simply broadcast the seeds over bare soil, water them in, and watch the green blanket form. When it's time to plant your main crops, you can cut it down or till it in as green manure. Either way, weeds won't get a foothold. So if you want a plant that not only blocks weeds but also builds your soil, ryegrass is an absolute winner. What do you think? Would you try ryegrass as a cover crop in your garden? Or do you already use cover crops? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. And finally, plant number 7. My number 1 best kept garden secret when it comes to weed control. Garlic. Now, most people grow garlic for the bulbs, and don't get me wrong, it's one of the most rewarding crops you can harvest. But garlic has another hidden talent that most gardeners completely overlook. It naturally suppresses weeds. Why does it work? Garlic grows upright with strong, narrow leaves that form a dense cluster. This not only shades the soil around it, but the plant also releases natural compounds into the ground that inhibit the growth of competing plants, especially common weeds. On top of that, garlic has the added bonus of repelling certain pests, which means it's working double duty in your garden. How to grow it? Garlic is simple. Plant the cloves in well-drained soil during the fall or early spring. As it grows, it creates a neat row of green shoots that leave very little room for weeds to creep in. And by the time summer rolls around, you're harvesting beautiful bulbs, all while having enjoyed a garden bed that stayed almost weed-free the entire season. So yes, garlic is my number 1 garden's kept secret. It fights weeds, repels pests, and gives you one of the most delicious harvests you'll ever enjoy. Now tell me, do you already grow garlic? Or will this be your first time planting it with a whole new perspective? Let me know in the comments. So now you've seen it. 7 plants that don't just grow, they work for you. From clover and creeping thyme, to pumpkins, ryegrass, and finally, my top secret weapon, garlic. Think about how much easier your gardening could be if instead of battling weeds week after week, you let these plants take care of the problem naturally. No chemicals, no frustration. Just smart, simple planting that transforms your garden into a self-sustaining ecosystem. I can honestly say that once I discovered these plants, gardening became less of a struggle and more of a joy. And that's what I want for you too, to spend less time pulling weeds and more time enjoying the beauty and harvest of your garden. Let's do a quick recap. Number 1, clover, the living carpet and soil builder. Number 2, mint, the aggressive grower that takes over before weeds do. Number 3, creeping thyme, the fragrant, beautiful ground cover. Number 4, sunflowers, the tall guardians that shade and suppress weeds. Number 5, pumpkins and squash, the canopy creators that smother weeds and feed you too. Number 6, ryegrass, the living mulch and soil protector. And number 7, garlic, my number 1 secret weapon, the weed and pest fighter that gives back in more ways than one. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these 7 plants are you most excited to try in your own garden? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It really helps tell YouTube that more gardeners need to see this. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly natural garden hacks. And here's a little teaser. Next week, I'll be showing you how to turn weeds themselves into free fertilizer for your garden. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for watching, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.